Hello, I am Investigator NZ0. Welcome to your podcast Latin Macabre Stories and More. Remember to read the warning notice in the description before listening. If you are new, pause, read, and continue. I invite you to follow us on YouTube. Thank you for following us, commenting and liking us here YouTube. Listen and visualize the following in your mind. We continue with the collection of stories about witches. It's always provincial stories, in my opinion. I don't think so, since these are not cases that occur only in a specific area of the country, but at the national level, with several similarities. Fireballs, huge turkeys, parents fast asleep, and a large number of other things heard in stories from both the north and south of Mexico. We start with the first of the 5 stories in this video. I remember many years ago hearing people say that witches like to suck children, and when some children were a little scared, I thought they only said it to scare us. But he spoke with someone who assured that this story was true, because someone very close to him witnessed a similar event. One time at night, while everyone was already asleep, they began to hear their brother-in-law's baby crying in a very strange way. Since they all lived in the same house and couldn't find a reason why her parents didn't seem to do anything to comfort her and contain her crying, they decided to go into her room. When they opened the door, they saw that the parents seemed to still be asleep. When they heard a knock on the window, they saw a black lump coming out. They ran after him and wanted to stop him, but they didn't see where he had gone. They woke up the parents, who were not seen, but the whole fact. They lifted the little boy who was under the bed. The little boy had bruises on his body. The witch who had gone out the window saw him sucked. Something similar to the above happened to another acquaintance, only this time with a tragic ending. The baby was found dead, with many bruises on his body, and when he saw that lump coming out of the window, the figure of a woman could be distinguished, which seemed to float. Her relatives and neighbors run inside her, as she is chased up a tree, and one step away from believing they could catch her, she turned into a ball of fire that disappeared into the sky. This is why, believing this story to be possible, the person who told me about it said take precautions when your child was a baby, so it is believed that for the child to be protected from any attack, it is necessary to place a pair of scissors placed in the shape of a cross under the bed or crib, and thus prevent the witch from approaching. A friend told me that when her youngest daughter was born, they went to town, a small community where she is originally from, since her now ex-husband was in Canada. Totally, she was waiting for her return to do the girl's baptism 2 weeks after the girl's birth. In that other one, she lives there, and about 3 weeks later another one was born. The joke is that my friend's daughter was already a month and a week old when rumors began to spread that they had seen a fireball nearby. My friend didn't believe in any of that, and she didn't see anything important in it. Fortunately, her grandmother did, and that night she decided to take the child to her room. Already in the early morning, she says that she began to hear scratching at the window. The grandmother picked up the girl and began to pray. Now they began to hear all the walls being torn. It was such a loud noise that everyone in the house woke up. My friend's sister and her husband, and my friend's other 2 girls. The moment came when the grandmother called everyone to her room and asked them to start praying with her. Although the noise went away and the adults did not sleep to stand guard and watch over the 3 girls, especially the baby. The next day, the grandmother went up to the roof to put up a mirror and came out downstairs with holy water. And since it is a community, and since they were not the only ones to suffer this type of attacks, they sent to tell the priest of the nearest town to baptize the babies as quickly as possible. It would be the following Saturday. What I'm telling you happened on Wednesday and Thursday. Again, noises began to be heard, but this time they were scratching the windows. They could be heard on the roof. They heard the glass breaking, and while the women were praying, the brother-in-law came out with a machete and an alarm that the witch was there. Immediately some neighbors came out with their own machetes. They say that witches are afraid of pointed objects, which is why they put scissors or a pair of pins in the shape of a cross. They tried to chase the witch, who turned into a sphere of fire, and she fled from there. The morning, when they went to see the mirror, indeed, already completely broken and spread all over the roof, they put it in salt water. My friend didn't tell me what else they did with it. That night the witch did not show up. On Saturday all the babies were baptized, and until now she tells me that when she had to return to the community again, nothing has been heard from or seen about that witch. And I wish you to continue like this. Although in some rural areas witches do not manifest themselves as before. Many people continue to perform rituals to protect themselves from the power of the evil forces of witches, mostly following the stories that continue to be passed down from generation to generation. For example, in a town called Bermejo, in the state of Durango, some people tell the story of a little boy who was sucked to death by witches when he was just over 6 months old. About 40 years ago, little Jesus had not been baptized, so he was very vulnerable to attack by witches. One of his older sisters says that although the explanation for Jesus' death is asphyxiation or crib death, the night his brother died many strange events happened. That night, the neighbors of the house across the street, who were very close to Jesus' family, heard some very loud whistling. Kings. The lady of the house was praying when the whistling started, and she said that when she stopped praying and they began to feel very sleepy, with great effort she reached the window and saw that on the ceiling of the room where Jesus was sleeping with his mother, there was 4 owls. One in each of the corners of the roof, and each continued praying, but could not get up. She was yelling at her husband, who was sleeping, to help her. In her dreams, her husband listened to what was happening, but without being able to fully wake up. It seemed as if the whistling lulled people lying in their beds into a deep sleep. After a while, the owls stopped whistling and flew away, slowly moving away. Reyes was able to get up and ran to shake her husband so he would wake up. The two went to knock on the door of Jesus' family. Reyes said that they knocked so loudly that it seemed like the door was going to fall. The window panes in Jesus' room almost broke from the blows. But Mother Jesus could not wake up. When she finally woke up, she opened the door, still very sleepy. Reyes told him what she had seen. They went to see Jesus. It was too late. The child was already dead. Roberto, Jesus' older brother, who would have been 22 years old when Jesus died, remembers that that night he was returning from a party. He said that a couple of blocks back, before arriving at his house, he suddenly started to get very sleepy. He arrived at his house very dazed and fell into bed, despondent with sleep, with everything in shoes. Stories like these make anyone think about the existence of witches and what they can do. Even today, in that town it is customary that when a child has not been baptized, the family always has a candle lit at night near the child and a glass of holy water to ward off witches. I am going to tell you about something that happened to me in 2004. I live in Mezquito, in Apodaca. When I came to live here, I heard comments that there were many witches in this neighborhood. Well, that year my daughter Rocio was born, we have a 2-story house, and at that time we had a grocery store. So due to lack of space on the ground floor, we had acquired a crib that had the option of being fixed, or either it couldn't be rocked. That afternoon my husband put her in her crib while she was already asleep, and we were downstairs talking when suddenly there was a noise like someone hitting the wall. Then my wife screamed the girl. We ran upstairs and saw the girl lying on the floor, and the bedroom window was open. There was no explanation for what happened since my daughter was only 9 days old and the crib couldn't be moved. To this day, when I remember, I can't find any other explanation that the witches wanted to take her. My grandmother said that witches come out at night. They turn into turkeys with big fiery eyes, as they use a special type of butter to remove their arms and legs so they can turn at night. They go looking for newborns to suck on. They take their lives. Not only do I remember my grandmother telling me that, but several people also tell me that they saw children with bruises all over their bodies, with their eyes open, dull, lifeless. This happened to a friend when she lived in Texas. She says that one day she was in the kitchen with her husband. Her newborn was in her room alone, according to her, sleeping. When she heard it, she started screaming and crying. Obviously, her husband told her to let her go to sleep right now, but she, being the child's mother, knew that those screams were not normal. She says that when she entered the room, the creature was at one end of the bed. Her legs were dangling and the shirt behind her was pulled as if something or someone was trying to pull her legs. Something happened to this same friend with her mother, one of those nights when her father went out to work. She was born in Puerto state of Mexico, in some caves where, according to the witches, sometime after her husband had gone to work, her mother told her that she began to hear the dogs barking too. Sounds like the walk of a turkey. He heard how he began to approach and knock on the door. And not only that, the damn animal climbed the tin roof trying to find some way to get in. The mother knew that to scare away witches you have to leave metal scissors open in the window or under the baby's bed. And that's what she did. She found the scissors and put them next to a window and started praying holy remedy. Because within minutes she left. In the morning the screams of a man in pain were heard, and because this man was crying, her 1-year-old child woke up sucked. This man started shouting, "Damn witches. They took my son to see how my daughters suck." The next day the man was found dead in his bed, full of bruises, with no shine in his eyes and with bare, lifeless eyes. Now the first thing I think about when hearing this story was that since I was almost a neighbor of the course or 60 kilometers away, these stories were the same ones that my grandmother told me. But at work there was another girl, one from Guadalajara, and I do remember seeing a flying turkey with fiery eyes, and I know that at her grandmother's ranch one night she was outside with her younger sister and they were playing. When her sister told her, "Look at that big bird," she turned to see where her sister was pointing, and to her surprise she saw a huge bird with eyes that shone like fire. She, without knowing what it was, began to shout at her grandmother, "Look, look, grandmother, come. Let's see that big bird up there on the tree." The grandmother already knew what it was and ordered them to go into the house and start sewing. This, according to him, is also another way to scare them away, or, if they are close to you, to make them stay in their place so that you can discover them, spinning with a silver needle. They entered the house and began to prepare the thread and needle. When her grandmother started praying loudly, the strange bird left, and the girls also slept with open scissors by the window. The next day, she says that she remembers that several ladies and gentlemen with guns and dogs, shortly before dark, began looking for the witch. They waited in the dark, and when they saw a ball of fire, the women began to pray. But not just any prayer. Apparently it was a kind of special prayer, which I owed the name to. But while the women were praying, it seems that the witch fell from the sky. The men with the dogs began searching, and to their surprise, they found a naked woman, lying and convulsing. They locked her in jail, while they were waiting for her father, the other town, to arrive to start burning her. The woman in jail became crazy and aggressive, cursing everyone who was there. Witches have something called fog. It's like a spell that makes you fall into a deep sleep. That's why many people don't listen. When they reached the houses, one way or another, everyone fell asleep in such a deep sleep that no one woke up the next day at noon, and the witch had escaped from her, and no one saw her again. Follow us, subscribe, and share on YouTube. This helps me continue with this project. Give your opinion. In the description you will find the emails to send your stories in case you like to share them. I appreciate your preference. Until the next episode. Latin macabre stories and more.